What's up guys, my name is Kason and welcome back to another War of the Visions Final Fantasy Brave Exvius video. Today is going to be my ultimate guide to Tidus, the handout Final Fantasy X water unit. I'm really excited about this actually, because before I was a lightning main, way back in the day, back when Final Fantasy X came out, I actually was a water main. I pretty much only played Tidus, Winter Victoria, and Aldira. That was my team comp that I rode for probably months. So I'm kind of excited to do a little bit of a guide for you today on Tidus. He was the recent poll winner for the poll that I just put out for our community, and so yeah, I'm really excited to go through this. So for the guide summary today, we're going to start with the character breakdown, talk about his stats, his resistances, different things like that. We're going to go through the bread and butter, so what the character does well. We're going to talk about his vision cards, main, sub, and team vision cards. We're going to talk about Espers, Truststones, TMRs, equipments, what skills to turn on and off. We're going to give you the entire works here, just to see how I think the best way to use Tidus in PvP is. So without further ado, let's get into this guide. So first things first, in the character breakdown here, let's look at the stats. So you're going to see right away that he has a very solid attack and agility stat. These are definitely above average, and even his HP is pretty darn good for somebody who's not really a tank. He can get quite bulky, and these three stats are definitely the big things that make him work. He also has a really respectable luck stat, so if you are trying to build some sort of evasion Tidus, he can work. I don't think personally that's the best way to build him, but if you are trying to run a full water evasion team, Tidus can be one of those units and can work somewhat well. The only stat really he's lacking is dexterity, which is kind of ironic because he's a very crit focused character. So if you can pump up his dex as much as you can, you definitely want to, because that stat is definitely starting at a low value. To go over his master ability, he has the standard water party master ability, so he has 10% HP for all water allies, and he has that 15 water attack for water allies. He has defense pen of 20 and slash attack pen of 30 for himself, so he starts with really respectable penetration numbers before you build anything, and his recent master ability too gave him 10% slash and missile resistance on the top. Coming down to the resistances, these resistance numbers are actually before the master ability too, so this might look confusing. He has 10% slash resistance. He actually has 20 once you have his master ability too. Same goes for missile, he will have 20% of that, 5% strike, 0% to pierce, and -10 to magic. A pretty decent physical bulk, I would say, for the most part, but nothing too crazy to write home about. In terms of his resistances, he has resistance to sleep and resistance to confusion, also with a 10% stop resistance. It's only 10%, but that can be pretty darn useful. He has the generic 20% fire resistance, just like all UR water characters have, and he has -10% to lightning. In terms of his strengths, he has the move Hastaga, which we will go over on the next slide. This is an AoE haste buff, very good for your team. Whether you're running a water team or a rainbow team, that ability in itself is very good. His decent penetration in terms of defense and slash attack, decent physical bulk, like I said, and he also has some access to status effects. Another strength here that I'm really not going to go over today because I'm going over as a PvP guide, but Tidus is a god tier PvE unit. So if you are looking for somebody for guild raids or just regular raids, different things like that, Tidus is an absolute animal. Coming over to the jobs, he has his own unique job, and then he has Paladin and Samurai as the subs, a standard 3-1 move jump, and he is cost 80. Okay, coming over to his bread and butter section. So this is really what I think makes Tidus tick, what I think makes him work super well. The number one thing that separates Tidus from other attackers and makes him a unique character is his Hastaga ability. There's no other physical attacker in the game with something like this. This is an AoE haste buff that's 42% increase to speed for 3 turns for him and his allies that are adjacent to him. This is a really good buff to bring to battle, regardless of who your other allies are that you're bringing. So this is a fantastic ability. I'm going to give you some tips later on how to get maximum value out of this ability, but just know this is what separates him from other characters, really makes him unique. The next thing that I really like is his strongest attacking ability, and that's Quick Hit Plus. It's a 200% damage modifier, which is really respectable. Decreases CT 15x for target. That's not a massive CT decrease, but potentially could be the difference between someone on your team going first or that person going first. So this does make a difference, absolutely, and it also increases his own agility by 25%. Note, this agility increase, that's not the same stat as increased speed or whatever, like haste. These stack, so you getting agility from Quick Hit Plus also increases speed just like Haste Daga does. It's not like they are the same value. They are separate and they both work together very, very well. Another thing that works, this is his basic attack, but the reason that I listed this on here is that it has 6 uses. It only costs 10 AP, which is like just a really, really incredibly low amount. It's an auto crit, so even if you didn't have a crazy high crit rate or dex rate, which I think you want to try and stack up on him, this is a really good skill for him, mainly just for the fact that it is his longest range skill. It's a 4 range. One of the weaknesses to Tidus that you'll see is that his ranges are really not that great. This is a 4 range attack, so it's pretty decent. So Sphere Shot is definitely a skill that makes him work. Jek Shot is very good as well. It is a defense break of 30, 165% damage. It's pretty decent in PvP. It's nothing insane, but it's good. In PvE, it's fantastic. Suncrest, this is a passive ability that he has. And now I will be straightforward with you guys. He has 4 passive abilities. All of them are good and all of them have places to use. I listed Suncrest because this is the passive that I use in probably 95% of PvP comps. But I do think there is a situation where you may not use it and may use some of the other passives, but I'll go over all 4 passives later and when I would use them, because I think they all are really good and have a place. Vision card layout, I've just listed some here that I think can work as main cards, sub cards, different things like that. So for the main card, I think his own card, Suteki Dane, is probably his best in slot as a main card. However, if you do have Dark Odin and you want some unit resistance, you want some attack value for the party, that 50% attack, this can be a really serviceable replacement. I don't know that it really is even a drop off necessarily. He will lose a little bit of defense penetration, so if you don't care about that, Dark Odin could be a good replacement, but if you want to stack up his defense pen, then you want to go Suteki Dane. Either way, both of these cards are absolutely fantastic for him. For sub VCs, I left this a Gaion one on. This is definitely not like a best in slot or anything like that. But if you're running some sort of like rainbow team or something like that, he will get some slash attack penetration for holding this card. And there's also slash attack and accuracy for the party. So I just kind of wanted to throw this in as like a rainbow VC, not necessarily for a water one. His own card is really good for him because it gives him agility, also gives the party some accuracy, which is really nice. Another card that I meant to list on here that I didn't is very, very specifically for if you are trying to go against an evasion team and if you're playing Tidus. I don't necessarily recommend Tidus into evasion just because he is only really able to successfully hit one character at a time. But if you have, if you want to slot him in and you're hunting evasion, you can use Rob's VC. He does have the Samurai sub job and it gives him the access to the ability Sonic Severance. That is a 240% modifier guaranteed hit, and he will absolutely 100-0 in evasion unit with that ability. So even though it really doesn't do anything for him for stats, it will basically one-shot the evasion unit. The problem you run into is they almost always are running some sort of courage or re-raise, whether it's Elena or Locke or Violet, something like that. But just know that can be a really, really good sub VC for him if you're specifically fighting evasion. Otherwise, I don't recommend it. For team VCs, I think one of these two should be used in pretty much every situation. This is Ildira's Holiday Party card. This gives 20% AoE resistance, and it also gives 35% dexterity to the water party. If you're specifically going against maybe like an earth team that's very pierce heavy, something like that, instead of the Holiday Party, you could run Leviathan. This gives 20% pierce resistance for the party, and it also gives 20% AoE resistance to the water party. So I wouldn't use both of these in a main slot for your team, but I would almost always use one of them. This is another really good card if you're fighting against water team specifically. This card is very good if you're fighting against lightning team specifically, and Tune-Up Time is just an absolutely fantastic card. It gives single target resistance, which is super, super useful. It gives Man-Eater to physical attacks. It gives accuracy as well. Just an overall fantastic card. Highly recommended putting in the party. Okay, so for favorite Espers, these are one of those things that you can tailor them to the team that you're fighting against. So whether you're fighting a specific element, if you're fighting wind or you're fighting earth, something like that, you may not want to use one of these 3 espers. You might want to try something with an earth resist or wind resist, something like that. But these are just a few that I really like for Tidus. As a general esper, I think Kraken is really, really good for him. 25 water attack's great, 15 slash attack great, 15 crit damage is great. That's essentially 55 modifier on his attacks, which is fantastic, and it has 15% attack. So this is only an MR esper, especially if you are somehow getting into a cost limited format thing where espers count against you. That's very rarely happening these days, but if it does, Kraken is very, very cost efficient for him. Odin is a fantastic esper as a general esper. You could run double slash attack with Maneater, but it's also extremely good against accuracy, like evasion type things. So let's say you're not using the Rob BC and you are trying to hunt evasion teams. 22 accuracy is very, very high. 15 slash attack's good. 25 human killer, fantastic, and you get 7% attack nodes as well. The last one, Leviathan, can just be a very serviceable water esper, just like Kraken. It doesn't have quite the damage capability as Kraken, but it has 25 water attack, 15 crit damage. It has 25 water resist though, which is an absolute nuts amount of resistance for a element. So if you were trying to go in that water mirror match, I highly recommend Leviathan as an esper for Tidus. Favorite TMRs, I could probably include a few more here, but I included 4 here, and I just kind of wanted to talk about why I like them. This first one, Tidus's boots. 5 agility is just really nice as an overall stat, and 30% crit rate, 30% crit damage. This is not something that I'm going to run on him all the time. However, if you are trying to run Tidus as some sort of like status effect build, for example, his Sleep Buster and his, I believe it's Slow Buster or something like that, they both have a 50% chance to cause a status effect on crit. So it's not a faith-based interaction. It's based on whether you crit or not. Having the increased crit rate and crit rate damage can be really, really useful if you are trying to run some sort of status effect build, or if you're really just trying to increase your damage, because he's going to crit almost all the time anyway. So it's really serviceable set of TMRs, especially if you're a new player and you don't have access to tons of TMRs. Tidus's shoes can definitely work just fine as his TMR. Another one that's solid, I think, is Halloween Frederica's TMR. Unfortunately, this doesn't work as well as I would think it does when I read this. The 20 unit resist down on crit. So essentially what happens is if Tidus crits an opponent, he drops their unit resist by 20, but the unit resist by 20 happens after the crit. So unfortunately, this isn't just like a 20 unit resist buff on Tidus. Otherwise, honestly, this would be just incredible on him. It would basically give 20 unit resist down as like every ability he uses, because he pretty much always crits. But this can be extremely serviceable for PvE. So I did want to also list this on there, even though this is mostly a PvP guide. This is a TMR that I don't have yet, but I'm really looking forward to getting it. 5 agility. This is Valentine or Sweetheart Ildir's TMR. 5 agility is great. The status effect on this is so good for Tidus. 30% unit resist is just a ton of bulk, which is really nice for keeping him alive. +1 move jump is a super undervalued thing for Tidus. Part of the problem with his kit, like, he does tons of damage, to be honest. Like, when he hits, he can slap some people, but getting in range to hit people with anything other than his most basic sphere shot can be pretty tricky sometimes. So giving him an extra move jump and extra bulk, this TMR is just so incredibly good for him. So if you have this, I would definitely recommend trying it. Another TMR that I use quite a bit on him, because he normally hovers around that 50, somewhere between 50 and 70% defense pen, is this Oldoa's Apron. I like this a lot because if he uses Hastiga on turn 1 and then uses Apron on turn 2, you can build him so that he only has like 50 defense pen or so, especially like I said earlier. Let's say you don't want to run Suteki Dene and you want to run Dark Odin on him or something like that. You can kind of afford that because you can use this and get that extra 50 defense pen. I just like this TMR a whole lot. You can even stack it up with some agility runes so he doesn't lose a whole lot in his speed. I think it's just really, really solid for Tidus. For favorite Truststones, I list some passives and some sets here. Take these with a grain of salt though, because this is something that you should pretty much tailor to who you're fighting against. Passives that I think are good all the time, HP and Luck. I think these are pretty much standard on almost every character. You can almost always get some value out of it. I like building up those physical resistances, especially Slash and Missile, because I'm probably targeting maybe some characters who do those types of things, since those are as high as resistances. I think Agility debuff resistance is really solid, but things I always like on the offensive side, always want 20% attack, always want 20% acquired AP. I love the dex. I love crit rate and crit damage, so whether you're getting that from another piece of equipment or your TMR, I always want these passives. Same with defense pen and also slash pen. So you definitely want your penetrations and your crits either on your equipment or your Truststone passives. In terms of sets for defensively, I think HP and Luck are the best. Again, it just depends on what you're going against. If you're going against Evade, you want Luck unless you're running the Rob TMR. Otherwise, I think HP is probably best in slot, and TP I'm going to make a small little like thumbs up for. If you do want to build up his AP but you don't want to sacrifice that offensive slot for an AP set, I think TP can be serviceable because it does give you acquired AP up. In terms of the offensive side, I think Assault and Critical actually both have a place, especially if you are trying to get some of those status effects off for the Critical. But I think Assault and Critical are both really respectable. Again, if you're trying to hit dodgy targets, aim is good. I think Speed is fantastic, and I think AP is a little lower than these other ones on Tidus. But honestly, he's just like such a weird character because any one of these sets can be useful on him. A lot of characters, like pretty much it's only one or two sets that you really want, but this character, you can use pretty much everything but the magic set, and it's going to be good for him. Equipment options for weapons. This is really tricky, but again, I always try and decide on my equipment based on what other Truststone passives I have. So if I have a Slash Pen and Defense Pen Truststone, well then I'm going to choose the Brotherhood +1 for the 30 water attack. If I have like a water attack Truststone, but I don't have Defense Pen or Slash Pen, well I'm going to use a Spine Blade or an Engine Blade as a weapon. So just try and always keep that in mind when you're building your team. Try not to overlap your passives. Try and be efficient with that as much as you possibly can. You may not have a perfect set every single time, but those are pretty much the three weapons that I think are serviceable on him. Armors and accessories, I think the Black Garb and the Survival Vest are both really respectable on him. Both can give good defense numbers. You could build the Evasion Black Garb too if you wanted, but I think 20 defense pen and 10 unit resist are fantastic passives for him. So either one of those I think you could build and you'd be just fine. Tidus's Necklace and Shinra Bangle are also very good because they both give crit damage. Shinra Bangle also gives 10 defense pen, which is nice, and the Tidus's Necklace gives 8 magic attack resist. Okay, so we're out here on WoTV Calc, and first thing I want to look at is his support skills. Now, I think I briefly mentioned this earlier, but he has 4 support skills, and honestly, all of them are good in different situations. So let's just go over them really quickly. So he has You Gotta Score, which gives him 12% agility and 20 crit rate. Obviously, if you run into a situation where you feel like you need to boost that speed up, this is a crit rate up, which is good for him, and it's a speed up. Those are both really just overall solid things for him. You can definitely use this a good chunk of the time and you'll get some value out of it. Holy Knight's Protection, 12 defense, 12% HP, just gives him a little more bulk. If you feel like he's not surviving like just barely on some hits, this could be the difference in keeping him alive. It's a really good overall status, or a really good overall support skill. Stun Crest is my absolute favorite for him because this is essentially a 20 damage modifier because he's, again, almost always critting, and 24% attack is a nice attack steroid for him. This is the most common one that I use out of the passives, and Blade Soul is another really good one. So if you are using Tidus as a main attacker, which I will go over just in a minute that I don't necessarily recommend that, but if you're using him as like he's your main carry, your hyper carry damage dealer, I think Suncrest and Blade Soul are really, really good together. These are just overall damage increases, and I think you can work it that way. In terms of his counters, I run Paladin's Guard most often, I would say. It's really good against physical damage dealers. However, if you are running against like a full magic team, Provoke can be really, really good. This is a 50% chance to counter. It doesn't have much of a range on it, but if it does hit somebody, it has a chance to berserk them. It's not a high percent chance to berserk, it's only a 25%, but if you're fighting like a full magic team, I could see a case for this, just as a berserk can pretty much nullify that character. Third Eye is pretty much only used if you're running Evasion Tidus, but yeah, overall I run Paladin's Card most of the time. In terms of his main job for skills on and off, the only things that I really turn off is I typically will turn off Cheer if I'm trying to run like a TMR that is buffing him or the party or something like that. Sometimes he will end up using cheer instead of the TMR, and that's often not what I want to do. I always leave Hastega on. Like I said, that is an ability that I pretty much always try and use for Tidus, so this is an absolute must. Delay Buster is decent. If there is somebody weak to slow, it's a very serviceable option. I find that he really doesn't use it very much though, unless you turn off quick hit. So if you are targeting teams and you really want to try and slow them or sleep them, you absolutely can with Tidus, but just be cautious of that because these skills are very low range. It's not necessarily how I recommend playing him, but it can be fun to do those. Otherwise, those skills are mostly PvE focused, and we'll leave it at that. Quick Hit Plus, like I said, is an absolute great ability. Jack Shot is really solid. Spiral Cut, I'm never going to use this. It's just really an okay ability. There's really nothing to write home about there. Paladin, the only abilities that I really ever use here are Sentinel and Taunting Blade. I don't mind leaving Sentinel on because he essentially will only use it when he's close to getting in the fight anyway, so it typically won't overwrite any important AI things that he needs to do. And I think Taunting Blade can be really serviceable because it's pretty much his only big AoE attack. It has the most range out of any skill that he has, and it hits in like a little cross-shaped AoE. So this is a very solid ability. I do recommend running Paladin subjob most of the time just because of this, so that he can hit a group of people. And I like Saintly Wall, but I turn it off because his AI likes to use this a lot. Like even before Hastega, like a lot of times, he just really likes using this ability. So I turn this off for the most part because I want him using other buffs instead. In terms of Samurai, like Kongu and Hien are kind of okay, but to be honest, unless I'm running Evasion Tidus, I'm never going to run this subjob. And for that, I'm only pretty much using Illusion here anyway if I'm running Evasion Tidus. For his limit burst, it's really good in PvE for like guild raids and stuff like that. For PvP, it's just okay. It's a very short range, costs 48 AP, which isn't a ton for a limit break, but it just does 205% damage modifier, and as you'll see earlier, quick hit plus is 200. So other than the fact that it hits a bunch, like this is really his best way to break a shield, but it's really not super efficient. I leave it on typically, but you can definitely turn it off if you find he's using it too much and grinding through his AP, because you definitely want to have enough AP for his other skills. Okay, so I'm out here on WoTV Calc and I've constructed a sample team comp, something that I think would look pretty darn optimal for a water team if you were including Tidus in it. I think his best partners that you can really pair him with are Astrius and Celeste. A couple of little shout outs. I think Ildira is decent. I think Winter Victoria is actually really good as a partner with him, especially if you don't have Astrius. But I think Celeste is really good for him as it just covers some of his magic weakness, since he is more of a physical bulky unit and not bulky to magic. So let's scroll down here and see what the comp looks like. For VCs, I have Celis using the Leviathan main VC and this Avow to Meet Again for the sub VC. Astrius is using Tune-Up Time and the Dark Odin as the sub VC, and Tidus has Suteki Dane and Thanks for the Votes as the subs. This gives tons of resistances all around the board, single target, AoE resistance, got pierce resistance, missile resistance, all sorts of things that work really well. I'm going to show you Tidus's build. Brotherhood in the main slot, 8/attack, 30 water attack is really respectable for him. Survival Vest gives him even more bulk, 10 single target resistance is nothing to sleep on, and 18 defense, again building into that physical bulk because Celeste is going to take care of some of that magic weakness. And for the TMR, I just chose Aldoa's Apron. You could do a number of different TMRs here, gives him some accuracy and some crit rate, which is really good. And then, like I said, the auto restore AP and defense pen is really solid. 50 defense pen on top of what he already has is going to put him really close, if not over that 100 defense pen mark. For the Truststones, I went with the HP set. I think this is probably the best for him, or right around there. 15 crit evade, 7 pierce resist, 7 slash resist, 7 missile resist. Again, stacking up those physical resistances as much as I can. I'm really trying to beat the shit out of that point. For the last Truststone, I have 10% HP and 10% luck. I think they're just overall really good stats to have on the character. And for the offensive side, I went with the Agility Truststone set. This could have been Assault, could have been Crit, could have been a few different things, but I went with Agility. 20% acquired AP, 20% attack, defense and slash pen, and crit rate and crit damage. They're very general runes that are good for a lot of offensive characters, but they are very good on Tidus. Now for the support skills, I equipped him with Suncrest and Holy Knight's Protection, so he got a little more bulk, he gained some more damage from the Suncrest, and I'm going to show you his agility stat is actually still 93, even though I didn't do the you gotta score one. If I did that instead, it would be 100, which is pretty crazy. But I'm still just going to give him the bulk, and honestly that 93 agility stat could be a little low during this meta game, but he's going to give an AoE haste buff to his entire team, so his agility is going to seem really friggin' high anyway, so I'm really not worried about it only being 93. He has 9540 HP. That is like quite a respectable number. 1510 attack. You could easily pump this number up to 1700 or 1800 if you are literally focusing on only that. But like I said, I think I like him as kind of a bulky, supportive, off attacker unit, and I think these numbers are really good for that. The Dex and Luck, 384, 366. Nothing crazy, but they're both kind of approaching that 400 number. Only 6 spirit, but 36 defense is very respectable too. 30 fire resist, 5 ice, earth, and wind, and then -5 to lightning. Obviously 8 to water, 5 to light, 5 to dark. The resistance is for physical, 27 slash, 27 pierce, 32 missile, all really respectable. And for offensive damage modifiers, he has 117 water attack and 58 slash attack. That's crazy. So he has 175 modifier, not including any of the crit damage modifier, which is 45. So if he crits, that's essentially 220 modifier on whatever attack he's doing. This guy is going to do tons of damage, and with that bulk that he has, he's a very, very formidable unit, and for a free unit from the FF10 collab, I think it's fantastic. He starts with 50 defense pen here, but again, if he uses Aldoa's apron, he now has 100 defense pen. So 1500 attack with all those modifiers, 100 defense pen, you pretty much need, you're going to need slash resistance or unit resistance, protect shell. You're going to need things like that. If Tidus hits somebody without those things, they're dead in one hit, like guaranteed. They need some of those resistances or they're not going to live through it. 40 slash attack penetration. It's nothing insane, but it's definitely something. It just means that you can't fully tank him. No one in the game can fully tank him, at least. 33 single target resist is actually quite high, and he has 20 AoE resist and a 25 human killer mod on top. So actually it's not even the mod we said, it's an extra 25. So assuming no buffs whatsoever, and before we do this, let's change the water mastery rank to something serviceable, like 25. I think a lot of people out there have probably something close to 25 water for their master ranks, right? So targeting a human light, let's do 50 defense, would crit for 93, 97. Let's give him some resistances. Everybody builds slash resist, like everybody. Let's put it up to like 30. And then let's give him a little bit of single target resistance. Let's do 20. Just to see kind of what that looks like, right? And then, so we're critting for 6164 against somebody that didn't build water resist, but built 20 unit resist, 30 slash resist, and 50 defense. I think that's a pretty respectable number, to be completely honest. And we haven't buffed or anything. We haven't like amped up any of our damage. I think that's really solid. Now, if we add the 50 defense pen that we get from Adol's apron, we're now hitting for 7292. Okay, so we're out here on some recorded fights that I made out here in the arena, and this is a comp that I put together where Tidus is not the supportive off attacker that I said I think he's good at, but this is where he is a main carry, and I wanted to show you that it is possible that he can still do this, even though I don't think that this is his optimal way to go about it. I don't have level 120 Astrius, so for me, I pretty much have to make Tidus the main carry. It's easier to not make him that way, but I'm going to show you that it can still work. As you can see in this build here, he has 1908 attack, which is absolutely ludicrous. He's close to 2000 here. 86 agility is low, but again, the AoE haste is going to help us out. And part of the reason we're reaching these numbers is we have both Suncrest and Blade Soul on equipped for the passives. A quick screenshot of the other party members that I have here. I have Celis, and I actually didn't have Resonance with a ton of different Espers here. I just had Freezes, so I have her running that. And I have the Chocobo Esper for Victora. But you can see I'm running Ifrit instead of Dark Odin because I don't have that. So this comp would be better if I had that VC, but I am running some of the other VCs that I talked about in the video before. So the first comp that we're going to go against is a full wind comp, and that is going to be More the Merrier, Joom, and Little Leela, all level 120, and this is the sample team that they put together. Now, getting into the first match, these fights are going to be a really good example of how Tidus's AI works and how you can tweak other members' AI to work to your advantage. So we have Celis coming over using Runic Blade, and then I realize that Winter Victoria has Saintly Wall on. So this actually is not exactly how we want it to go. This is an example of getting only 2 people in your Hastiga turn 1. Now takes 2 turns to get that Hastiga off. That is not what we want. We want to try and get all 3 off on the very first turn. So we will show you the comparison from this fight and future fights on how that works. Tidus does pop that Sentinel, gets closer to the fight, gets some good AoE damage on the other team. Celis is doing a very good job tanking up that magic damage. Slowly whittling down June, but Leela does heal them. Now Tidus is going to step forward. 5,300 damage onto the June is a very respectable amount. Leela gets the counter. And Victoria's pretty much out of AP, so she's just kind of auto-attacking right now. So we need Tidus to hard carry. 8698 on the basic 10 AP attack, so very, very good damage coming from Tidus. Celis goes down, but it shouldn't be an issue, as Tidus is going to auto-attack for 5694. So we did win that fight, just kind of showing that this team can get some things done. But in the next fight, let's show how the AI can be better performed in terms of getting that Hastiga off turn 1 on the entire team and see how that works out. Okay, so now for this second fight, I've done a couple of things to change how my party works to get the buffs stacking exactly how I want them to go. So turn 1, as before, Celis is going to run over. I already know that. She's going to use Runic Blade and run right next to Tidus. Tidus is going to start channeling his Hastiga ability on him and Celis. Now, ideally, what I want is I want Victoria to run all the way next to Tidus so that she will be in that Hastiga range. The problem is Victoria is exactly 3 spaces away from Tidus. She has 3 movement. What she will do right now with this King Mont TMR as is she will run 2 spaces over to Tidus and 1 space up to get next to Celis, because Celis has hate. She will use the AoE resistance buff on her and Celis rather than her and Tidus, which means she will not be next to Tidus when that buff goes off. So what I've done here is I've equipped the Producer's Bow Tie to Victoria. Now this serves as 2 different things. For one, as a ranger, dropping the movement can be sometimes a beneficial thing because you don't want your rangers running too far up into the fight. So slowing them down a little bit by reducing that move by 1 can be beneficial for that. The other thing is she will instead reach the person that she can reach, which in this case is Tidus. She won't get all the way to Celis. She will buff the AoE resist of her and Tidus, and then Tidus is now in range to Hastiga all 3 members. Let's see how this works in action. So again, this second fight, I'm going against another win team, and I want to see if it works out any differently if we are able to get the buffs off exactly how we want to do them. We are again going against a More the Merrier, Halloween Leela, and a June. Okay, so we can see turn 1, Celis is going to do that Runic Blade just like we said, run right in front of Tidus so that he is next to her. So he does not need to move to use Hastiga. He's going to start channeling it, and now Winter Victoria runs right next to him to get that AoE resist buff, and now Hastiga goes off perfectly, getting all 3 in that buff. We also changed Tidus's TMR to warming up, so he has that crit rate and crit damage up, and now everybody's ready to go for this fight. Let's see how it works out. So June walks up, gets the agility down on Celis. Tidus does Sphere Shot. She actually gets the guard, her counter ability, so it actually reduced the damage quite a bit. But Victoria does not get guarded, dispels those buffs that she has, and gets rid of her. Tidus walks up, drops 10k on More the Merrier, no problem. Halloween Leela does get the full life on June, but it shouldn't be an issue. Tidus does almost 9k to June now that she doesn't have that Protect and Shell up. Leela's going to try her best to heal, but Tidus is going to take her out with 11,440 damage on the Sphere Shot. So, like I said before, Tidus's damage can get absolutely nuts. His biggest issue is his mobility, and he doesn't have tons of AoE, but he can certainly do a lot of serviceable damage if set up correctly, and alongside somebody like Winter Victoria who can dispel some of those buffs that keep him from doing damage, that tandem can work very well together. Let's check out this next fight and see what happens. For our final fight, we are done bullying the win teams. We are targeting the Astrius Celis Velis combo, that super meta combo that's always out there in arena and guild battles and things like that. So this is the team that we're going to go up against, and we'll see how it goes. Guys, this would be right about the time of the video. If you are getting value from this content, please hit that like and subscribe button down below. I really would appreciate it. So this fight, the way that I see it is the one advantage we have over this comp is that we have a dispel spread on Winter Victoria. So that Hastica buff we have is not going to be dispelled by them. However, Velis's haste ability can be dispelled by us. So that is the one advantage we have over them, and we'll see how this plays out here. So Winter Victoria gets her defense piercing rate buff up. Velis gets protect and shell on. Astrius has his courage. Tidus steps up, does only 3,300 to the Celis, so not great. I think she really is stacking that slash resistance. I unfortunately, idiotically, am running Magic Reflex on the Celis, but again, like I said, the Winter Victoria Dispel spread comes in clutch and gets 2 of their haste. Astrius drops the limit break. Tidus gets 9263 damage on the Tidus, and the AoE kills him from Celis. So now it is a 3v2. We're in pretty good position. We got 2 abilities come off, but Tidus actually tanks through both. Steps up, sphere shots 12,000 damage onto the Velis, and unfortunately he does drop to the Celis, but that 3v1 is going to be too much for this opposing Celis, and we should be in good shape. And we're going to just slowly whittle her down. And that is going to be the battle, guys. So thank you so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. I hope you got some value out of it. It was a really fun experience doing something other than a lightning character. I'm sure you guys have seen from my other poll, but my next character guide will actually be on Esther, which I know a ton of people are looking forward to. So super excited about that. Make sure you guys hit those like and subscribe buttons, and we'll see you in the next one. Have a wonderful day.